The metal chair creaked under Jake Martinez's weight as he shifted position. The interrogation room was cold, sterile, and designed to make prisoners feel small. But Jake didn't look scared. He looked tired, like a man who had seen too much and lived through what should have killed him. Security Chief Kraltek studied the human across the table. The alien's 4 eyes moved independently, taking in every detail of his prisoner. Kraltek had interrogated thousands of beings from across the galaxy, but this human was different. There was something in his calm gray eyes that made the experienced security chief uncomfortable. "State your name and origin," Kraltek said in his translator-modified voice. "Jake Martinez, mining engineer from New Texas Colony." The human's voice was steady, without fear or anger, just facts. Kraltek's clawed fingers tapped on his datapad. New Texas had been destroyed 3 months ago by a void hammer weapon. The planet killer had cracked the world from core to surface, turning it into floating debris in space. No one survived void hammer attacks. No one. New Texas was eliminated. All life forms were confirmed dead, Kraltek stated. Jake rolled up his sleeves. His arms were covered in spiral burn scars that seemed to shimmer with their own light. The marks twisted from his wrists to his shoulders in perfect patterns. Kraltek had never seen anything like them. "I was in the deep mines when it happened," Jake said. "Level 47, about 3 miles down. The weapon's energy came through the planet's core like lightning through metal. Should have killed me instantly." Kraltek's scanner beeped frantically. The device was designed to identify weapons, energy sources, and biological threats. Right now it was screaming warnings that made no sense. According to the readings, the human sitting calmly across from him contained enough energy to destroy a small moon. "That's impossible," Kraltek whispered. Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "A lot of things are impossible until they happen. Your people fired a planet killer at my home. 2.3 million people died in seconds. But the energy didn't kill me. It changed me." The security chief stood up and backed away from the table. His training told him to call for backup, to activate containment protocols, but something about the human's calm demeanor kept him frozen in place. "What did it do to you?" Kraltek asked. Jake stood slowly. The scars on his arms began to glow brighter, casting strange shadows on the walls. "It taught me that humans are harder to kill than you thought. The weapon's energy found something in my cells, something that could absorb it instead of being destroyed by it." Kraltek's datapad was buzzing with alerts. Medical scanners showed that Jake's cellular structure had been completely altered. His nervous system now carried electrical charges that should have fried his brain. His bones had crystallized to contain massive amounts of energy. By all scientific understanding, he should be dead. "You're saying you absorbed a planet killer, weapons energy?" Kraltek could barely believe the words as he spoke them. "Not all of it, just the part that tried to kill me." Jake held up his hand. Energy crackled between his fingers like captured lightning. "Turns out human bodies are pretty good at adapting to things that should destroy us. It's what we do." The security chief felt a chill run through his 4-chambered heart. The Galactic Confederacy had used void hammers on 12 human worlds. They had killed over 50 billion humans in coordinated strikes designed to end humanity's expansion into space. It was supposed to be clean, final, and complete. "How many others?" Kraltek asked quietly. Jake's expression didn't change, but the energy around his hand grew brighter. "Others? How many other humans were in deep installations when the attacks happened?" For the first time, Jake's calm mask slipped. A smile spread across his face that made Kraltek's blood freeze. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized how much prey was available. Every human world had deep mines, research stations, underground facilities. Thousands of people worked below the surface on each planet. Jake sat back down, but now he looked like he was in control of the room. "Did you really think you got all of us?" Kraltek's mind raced through the implications. 12 worlds, thousands of deep installations. If even a small percentage of humans had survived the way this one had, if they had all been changed the same way. "We monitored all the sites. No life signs were detected after the attacks," Kraltek said. but his voice lacked conviction. Jake laughed, and the sound made the lights flicker. Your scanners look for normal life signs, heat signatures, electrical activity, chemical processes. But we're not normal anymore. The weapon changed us into something your technology doesn't recognize. The security chief activated his emergency communicator. Control, I need immediate backup in Interrogation Room 7. Subject is a Class 5 threat. Jake didn't try to stop him. He just sat there with that terrible smile, watching Kralthek panic. You should probably contact your fleet command too. Tell them about the energy absorption. Tell them about the cellular changes. Tell them that trying to exterminate humanity might have been the worst mistake your people ever made. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the room in red. But Jake remained perfectly calm, like a man sitting in his own living room instead of a high-security detention facility. You want to know the funny part? Jake said as armed guards burst through the door. I wasn't even angry about New Texas until I found out it was intentional. Until I learned that your Confederacy decided humans were a problem that needed to be solved permanently. The guards pointed their weapons at Jake, but their hands were shaking. Their energy detectors were going crazy, showing readings that suggested the human was essentially a walking bomb. Kralthek stared at the scars covering Jake's arms. Each spiral mark pulsed with absorbed energy from a weapon designed to crack planets. This single human contained power that defied every law of physics the Confederacy understood. What do you want? Kralthek asked. Jake stood up again. The guards tensed, but he made no aggressive moves. He simply looked at the security chief with those calm gray eyes and spoke words that would haunt Kralthek for the rest of his life. I want you to find the others. I want you to understand what you created when you tried to murder my species. And I want you to send a message to every government in this galaxy. Jake's scars flared with brilliant light. Humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist. The interrogation room's reinforced walls began to crack under the pressure of contained energy. And somewhere in the depths of space, 11 other dead worlds held their own terrible secrets, waiting to be discovered. Commander Lisa Stone stepped out of the transport shuttle onto the broken surface of what used to be New Denver. The human colony world was now nothing but floating chunks of rock and metal, held together by artificial gravity generators. 3 months after the Void Hammer attack, the air still tasted like burned metal and death. Scanners are picking up energy readings from the old geothermal facility, reported Dr. Carl Bennett, the mission's xenobiologist. He was one of the few Confederacy scientists who had spoken against the human genocide. Now he was part of the Joint Task Force searching for survivors. Lisa nodded and checked her weapon. The official mission was humanitarian, searching for any remaining humans who might need rescue. The real mission was far more urgent. After Jake Martinez's escape from the security station, the Confederacy needed to find and contain any other void-touched humans before they became threats. The team made their way through the ruins of New Denver's capital city. Buildings had been sheared in half by the planet-cracking weapon. Streets ended in mid-air where chunks of the world had been blown apart. Everything was silent except for the hum of their life support systems. Contact ahead, whispered Sergeant Mike Turner, the team's military escort. His scanner was beeping rapidly. One life form, humanoid, in the geothermal plant's lower levels. They descended through twisted metal corridors that had somehow survived the planet's destruction. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls. As they went deeper, the energy readings on their scanners grew stronger. Whatever's down here is giving off massive amounts of power, Bennett said nervously. These readings are similar to what we got from the Martinez subject. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. Jake Martinez had demonstrated abilities that terrified the galaxy's best scientists. If there were others like him, the situation was far worse than anyone had imagined. They found her in what used to be the main turbine chamber. Amy Clark sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the twisted remains of massive generators. Her entire body glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her eyes were closed and she was humming something that sounded like music but made their bones vibrate. "Ma'am," Lisa called out softly. "Amy Clark?" The woman's eyes snapped open. They were completely white, filled with electrical energy that crackled and sparked. When she saw the team, she scrambled backward against the wall like a frightened animal. "Stay back!" Amy screamed. "I can't control it! Every time I get upset, things explode!" As if to prove her point, one of the broken generators near her suddenly erupted in sparks and flames. The metal twisted and melted like it was made of plastic. Bennett stepped forward slowly, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Amy, we're here to help. You're not alone anymore. We know about the changes." "Changes?" Amy laughed, but the sound was edged with hysteria. "Is that what you call this? I was a maintenance technician. I fixed air filters and checked coolant levels. Now I'm a walking power plant that kills everything I touch." Lisa could see the woman was barely holding on to her sanity. Unlike Jake, Martinez's controlled demeanor, Amy was fighting a losing battle against abilities she didn't understand. "Amy, we found another survivor. Jake Martinez from New Texas. He's like you. He absorbed the weapon's energy instead of dying from it," Lisa explained. Amy's glowing eyes focused on her with desperate hope. "Someone else lived? Someone else is like this?" "Yes. And we think there might be more. We need to find them before—" Lisa paused, not wanting to say before they become threats to galactic security. "Before they lose their minds like I'm losing mine," Amy finished. She held up her hands, and electricity danced between her fingers. "I can feel the weapon's energy inside me. It's not just power. It's angry. It remembers what happened to our worlds." Bennett's scientific curiosity overcame his caution. "What do you mean it remembers?" Amy stood up, and the air around her shimmered with heat. "The energy isn't just random destruction. It carries information, data. When the Void Hammer cracked New Denver, it recorded everything. Every death, every scream, every moment of terror. And now that's all inside me. The implications hit the team like a physical blow. The weapon hadn't just failed to kill these humans completely. It had turned them into living recordings of their world's destruction. Amy, can you access those recordings? Can you see what happened?" Bennett asked. The woman nodded, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. "I see it all. Every night when I try to sleep. The Confederacy ships appearing in orbit. The countdown to firing. The moment when 2.8 million people realized they were about to die." Sergeant Turner's radio crackled to life. "Turner, this is command. We're receiving distress signals from 7 other dead worlds. Same energy signature as your current location." Lisa felt the blood drain from her face. 7 more worlds. 7 more possible survivors like Amy and Jake. Each, one carrying the memories and power of a planet-killer weapon. "Amy, we need your help," Lisa said urgently. "If there are others out there, they might be going through what you're experiencing. They might be scared and confused." Amy wiped her eyes, leaving trails of light on her cheeks. "They're not just scared, Commander. They're angry. The weapon's energy feeds on strong emotions. Fear, rage, hatred. Every human who survived is carrying the collective fury of their entire dead world." Bennett was frantically taking notes on his scanner. "This is unprecedented. The humans aren't just energy absorbers, they're psychic repositories for planetary trauma. Each survivor is essentially connected to the death screams of millions of people. And that's making them stronger," Amy added quietly. "I can feel it growing inside me. The more I remember about New Denver's destruction, the more powerful I become. It's like the dead are giving me their strength." Lisa's communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Fleet Command. The text made her blood run cold. "Jake Martinez has escaped custody. Security station partially destroyed. Multiple casualties. Subject demonstrated ability to channel massive energy discharges. All search teams advised to maintain maximum caution. Yurao." Looked up at Amy, who was now glowing so brightly that she was hard to look at directly. "Amy, we need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere you can learn to control these abilities." "Control them?" Amy smiled, and for a moment she looked like Jake Martinez had looked in that interrogation room. Predatory. Dangerous. "Commander, I don't think you understand. The Confederacy didn't just fail to kill us, they created something new. Something that remembers every human they murdered and has the power to do something about it. The geothermal plant around them began to shake as Amy's emotions spiked. Metal groaned and twisted. Lights exploded in showers of sparks. And somewhere in the distance, 6 more energy signatures activated on dead worlds across the galaxy. The search for survivors had become a race against time, but Lisa was beginning to realize that they weren't racing to save the survivors from their trauma. They were racing to save the galaxy from what that trauma was turning them into. Amy looked at her with those terrible glowing eyes and spoke the words that would haunt Lisa's dreams. Tell your Confederacy that the dead are waking up, and they remember everything. The abandoned research station drifted silently at the edge of what used to be human space. Station Echo 9 had been evacuated when the Confederacy began their extermination campaign, leaving behind only empty corridors and dormant computers. Now it served a different purpose entirely. Jake Martinez stood in the station's central hub, watching as 5 other figures materialized from transport beams. Each arrival brought a surge of energy that made the station's lights flicker and hum. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. Amy Clark stepped forward first, her body still glowing with the soft blue light that marked her as void-touched. Behind her came Peter Davis, a former colonial Marine whose scarred hands crackled with red energy. Katie Moore followed, a hydroponics specialist whose green-tinged aura made nearby metal surfaces sprout crystalline growths. Steve Adams, a communications officer, generated waves of electromagnetic interference just by breathing. Finally, Maria Gonzalez emerged, her geological expertise somehow translating into the ability to sense gravitational fields across vast distances. 6 survivors, Jake said quietly. 6 out of 50 billion. Peter's military bearing was still intact despite the energy coursing through his veins. Intel suggests there might be more. Deep space monitoring stations, asteroid mining operations, research posts. But these are the only ones we've been able to locate so far. Katie touched one of the station's support beams, and immediately metallic crystals began growing from the point of contact. She jerked her hand back with a frustrated expression. Sorry. Still learning to control it. Don't apologize, Jake said. What happened to us isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to understand and use. Steve was monitoring communication, channels on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The electromagnetic energy from his body interfacing directly with the station's systems. Confederacy chatter is intense. They're calling us void-touched officially now. Threat level maximum. They've got Admiral Vextar assembling a special fleet to hunt us down. Maria closed her eyes and extended her senses beyond the station. I can feel gravitational distortions from their ships. They're using experimental weapons, something designed to disrupt energy patterns. Jake nodded grimly. They're planning to finish what they started, but this time they want to make sure we don't survive. Amy moved closer to the group, and as she did, something extraordinary happened. The energy signatures of all 6 survivors began to resonate with each other. The air shimmered, and suddenly their minds were connected in a way that transcended normal human communication. Through the link, they experienced each other's memories of destruction. New Texas cracking apart as Jake watched from the deep mines. New Denver's geothermal cores overloading around Amy. Peter's horror as his military base on New Colorado was vaporized above him while he worked in the underground armory. Katie's desperate attempts to save her greenhouse labs on New Oregon as the planet died around her. Steve's final transmission from New Arizona before the communication arrays were destroyed. Maria's geological surveys of New Nevada being interrupted by the planet's core exploding. But the shared memories went deeper than just their individual experiences. Through the energy they had absorbed, they could feel the psychic echoes of their dead worlds. 50 billion human voices crying out in their final moments, all of that pain and rage and desperate desire for survival flowing through the 6 survivors. We're not just carrying weapon energy, Jake realized through the mental link. We're carrying the collective consciousness of our dead. Peter's military mind immediately grasped the implications. That's why we're getting stronger. Every human who died in the attacks is somehow contributing to our power. Maria's geological expertise provided another piece of the puzzle. The void hammers didn't just crack our worlds, they cracked dimensional barriers. The weapon energy exists partially outside normal space-time. That's how it can carry information and consciousness along with destructive force. Steve's technical knowledge filled in more details. The human nervous system must be uniquely compatible with the weapon's energy frequency. That's why we survived when everything else died. Our brains can process and store the psychic data. Katie's understanding of biological systems completed the picture. We're not just survivors, we're living memorials. Every dead human is somehow still alive inside the energy we carry. Through their shared consciousness, they felt something else, anger. Not just their own individual rage at what had been done to their worlds, but the combined fury of 50 billion murdered humans. It was a tide of emotion so vast and powerful that it threatened to overwhelm their individual personalities. This is what the Confederacy created when they tried to exterminate us, Jake said aloud, breaking the mental link before it consumed them entirely. They thought they were eliminating a threat. Instead, they created something unprecedented. Peter straightened into his old military posture. We could use this power to strike back, hit their key installations, take out their leadership, show them that genocide has consequences. No, Jake said firmly. That's thinking too small. The UMA Confederacy isn't just a few leaders or military bases. It's an entire galactic civilization that decided humans were acceptable targets for extinction. We need to address the root of the problem. Amy's eyes flared with energy. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we demonstrate our new nature so completely that no species in this galaxy will ever again consider humans weak enough to exterminate. Jake's scars began to glow brighter. We show them what 50 billion dead humans can accomplish when they work together. Maria suddenly gasped, her gravitational senses detecting something massive approaching their position. Admiral Vextar's fleet, 12 ships heavily armed carrying those experimental disruption weapons. They'll be here in 6 hours. Steve immediately began monitoring military communications. They're not planning to capture us. This is a kill mission. They want to finish what the Voidhammers started. Katie looked around at the 5 other survivors, her expression hardening with determination. Let them come. They tried to murder our species and thought they succeeded. Time to show them how wrong they were. Peter began calculating tactical scenarios, but Jake held up a hand to stop him. This isn't about tactics or strategy. This is about making the galaxy understand something fundamental about humans. Which is? Amy asked. Jake smiled, and the expression was both terrifying and beautiful. That we don't stay dead when you kill us. We just get angry and come back stronger. The abandoned research station began to vibrate as the 6 survivors prepared for what was coming. Their combined energy output was already visible from space, a brilliant beacon that announced to the galaxy that humanity's children had inherited their parents' indomitable will to survive. In 6 hours, Admiral Vextar would learn why trying to exterminate humans had been the worst mistake the Confederacy ever made. The dead were about to show the living exactly what 50 billion murdered souls could accomplish when given the power to act. The gathering storm was about to break, and it would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Vextar studied the tactical display from the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Judgment. 12 of the Confederacy's most advanced warships hung in space around the abandoned research station, their experimental weapons charged and ready. Intelligence had assured him that 6 enhanced humans would be easy targets for ships designed specifically to hunt them. The Admiral's confidence began to waver when his sensors detected the energy readings from the station. The 6 life forms inside were generating power levels that exceeded anything in the Confederacy's weapons database. Sir, the energy output from the station is increasing exponentially, reported his science officer. These readings don't match what we observed from the Martinez subject. Vextar's forearms tensed on his command console. They've had time to adapt. Begin the attack. All ships target the station's power core. Before the first shot could be fired, the station's hull began to glow. The metal itself was conducting energy in patterns that formed geometric shapes across the entire structure. Then Peter Davis and Steve Adams appeared on the station's exterior, walking in open space without protective suits. "Impossible," breathed the science officer. "They're surviving in vacuum." Peter moved with military precision, his scarred hands trailing red energy as he approached the lead ship's shield generator. Steve followed, electromagnetic pulses radiating from his body and disrupting the fleet's communication systems. They weren't wearing spacesuits because they didn't need them anymore. The weapon energy had changed them so fundamentally that they could survive in conditions that would kill normal humans instantly. "All ships open fire," Vextar commanded. Energy, beams and projectile weapons struck the two humans directly. The weapons that should have vaporized them simply passed through their bodies like they were made of light and shadow. Peter reached the shield generator and placed his hands on the hull. Red energy poured from his scars into the ship's systems, overloading them in seconds. The Righteous Judgment's shields failed just as Katie Moore and Maria Gonzalez emerged from the station. Katie's abilities had evolved beyond simple crystal growth. She was now reshaping matter at the molecular level, turning the vacuum of space into crystalline structures that grew toward the fleet like living things. Maria used her gravitational senses to guide the crystal formations, creating a three-dimensional maze that trapped 3 of the smaller ships. "Sir, we're losing multiple vessels," reported the tactical officer. "The humans are demonstrating abilities far beyond our intelligence estimates." Admiral Vexitar activated the fleet's experimental weapons. Disruption beams designed to interfere with energy patterns struck the 4 humans directly. For a moment, they flickered like bad holographic projections. Then Amy Clark appeared beside them, her blue energy merging with theirs to stabilize their forms. "The disruption weapons are ineffective," the science officer announced in disbelief. "They're adapting to our countermeasures in real time." But the true horror began when Jake Martinez finally emerged from the station. He didn't fly through space like the others. He walked, and each step created a ripple of energy that traveled faster than light, reaching across the battlefield to every ship simultaneously. "Attention, Admiral Vextar." Jake's voice came through every communication system in the fleet, carried by Steve's electromagnetic abilities. "You came here to finish exterminating humanity. Let me show you what you're really fighting." Jake raised his arms, and the spiral scars covering his body blazed with brilliant light. But the energy wasn't just his own anymore. Through the psychic link the 6 survivors shared, he was channeling the collective power of 50 billion dead humans. The space around the fleet began to shimmer and distort. Ghostly figures appeared throughout the battle zone. Translucent humans, in colonial marine uniforms, mining gear, civilian clothes, children's outfits. They were the psychic echoes of everyone who had died in the Voidhammer attacks, given form by the energy the survivors carried. "This is what genocide looks like," Jake announced as the phantoms moved toward the fleet. 50 billion humans who were murdered for the crime of existing. They remember their deaths, Admiral. They remember who ordered those deaths, and they've been waiting for the chance to respond. The ghostly figures passed through the ship's hulls like they weren't there. But when they touched the crews inside, the effects were terrifyingly real. Confederacy soldiers began screaming as they experienced the death memories of entire human worlds. They felt New Texas cracking apart, New Denver's core exploding, New Colorado's surface boiling away. Admiral Vexitar himself staggered as a phantom child touched his arm. Suddenly he was experiencing the last moments of a human kindergarten class on New Oregon, feeling their confusion and terror as the planet died around them. The psychic assault was so overwhelming that several of his bridge crew collapsed. "Weapons. Free!" Vexitar managed to scream through the psychic chaos. "Kill them all." But the fleet's weapons were no longer responding to their commands. Steve had interfaced directly with their computer systems, turning their own armaments against them. Ship after ship erupted in explosions as their missiles detonated inside their own launch tubes. Amy floated between the burning vessels, her blue energy reaching out to overload their power cores one by one. Each ship that died added its energy to her own, making her glow brighter and more terrible. Peter and Katie worked together to systematically dismantle the fleet's remaining defenses. Peter's military expertise guided Katie's matter manipulation abilities, allowing her to precisely target critical systems and turn them into useless crystal formations. Maria used her gravitational senses to predict the fleet's desperate attempts to escape, warping space around the surviving ships to keep them trapped in the battle zone. But it was Jake who delivered the final message. As the last functional ship burned around Admiral Vexitar, Jake appeared on the bridge like a figure, made of contained starlight. "Your Confederacy wanted to eliminate humanity as a threat," Jake said, his voice carrying the weight of 50 billion souls. "Congratulations. You've succeeded in teaching us exactly how threatening we can become." Jake placed his hand on the way. Admiral's forehead and Vextar suddenly experienced every human death from every destroyed world simultaneously. The sheer magnitude of suffering and loss nearly shattered his mind. "Return to your masters," Jake commanded. "Tell them that the dead remember, the survivors have evolved, and humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist in this galaxy." The Righteous Judgment's emergency systems activated, launching the Admiral's escape pod toward Confederacy space. As Vextar fled, he could see the research station behind him, now glowing like a small star and surrounded by the ghostly figures of 50 billion murdered humans. The 6 survivors watched the last escape pod disappear into hyperspace. Around them, the wrecks of the Confederacy's most advanced fleet drifted in space, testament to what happened when a species tried to commit genocide against humanity. "They'll be back," Peter said pragmatically, "with bigger fleets and better weapons." Jake smiled as the phantom figures began to fade back into the energy that contained them. "Let them come. They made us into something new when they tried to destroy us. Every attack just makes us stronger." The battle was over, but the war for humanity's survival had truly begun, and across the galaxy, terrified alien civilizations were about to learn that trying to exterminate humans had been the worst mistake they could possibly make. The dead had spoken through their living champions, and their message was clear. Humanity endures, humanity remembers, and humanity's children carry the fury of 50 billion souls. 3 months after the destruction of Admiral Vextar's fleet, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The debris from 12 Confederacy warships now formed the foundation of New Haven, a space station that defied every law of physics and engineering. The galaxy understood. Jake Martinez stood before the main viewing port, watching human ships powered by void energy departing for distant star systems. The vessels glowed with the same ethereal light that marked the void touched, and their crews consisted of both living humans and the psychic echoes of the dead, who had chosen to remain active in the physical world. "Construction report, Amy," Clark announced as she entered the command center. Her blue energy had stabilized into a constant controlled glow that allowed her to interface directly with the station's systems. "Sectors 7 through 12 are complete. We now have living space for 10,000 survivors." The station was unlike anything previously seen in galactic civilization. Its hull was grown rather than built, using Katie Moore's evolved matter, manipulation abilities to transform raw metals into crystalline structures that conducted and amplified void energy. The internal systems were a hybrid of human engineering and psychic manifestation, maintained by the collective consciousness of 50 billion dead humans. Dr. Carl Bennett approached Jake with his latest research findings. The xenobiologist had joined the human survivors after witnessing what the Confederacy had become in their quest to eliminate humanity. "The genetic analysis is complete," Bennett reported. "The children born here are showing enhanced abilities from birth. Your species isn't just surviving the void energy exposure, you're evolving because of it." Jake nodded as he watched a group of human children playing in the station's central garden. The youngest ones could manipulate matter and energy as naturally as normal children played with toys. Their laughter created visible waves of harmonic energy that made the station's hull sing like a musical instrument. "Evolution through attempted extinction," Jake mused. "The Confederacy tried to end our species and instead pushed us to the next stage of human development." Peter Davis entered with tactical reports from across the galaxy. His role as military coordinator had expanded as more human survivors were located and brought to New Haven. Each new arrival added their absorbed weapon energy to the collective, making the entire community stronger. "Intelligence update," Peter announced. 17 species have withdrawn from Confederacy space rather than risk conflict with us. The Zephyrian government is facing internal collapse as member worlds demand peace negotiations. Steve Adams was monitoring communication channels throughout known space, his electromagnetic abilities allowing him to eavesdrop on even encrypted military transmissions. The Confederacy's calling it the human terror. Their propaganda is claiming we're monsters who consume souls and raise the dead. Maria Gonzalez laughed from her position at the gravitational sensors. They're not entirely wrong. We do carry the consciousness of our dead, and those ghosts are very much active in our decision-making. As if summoned by her words, translucent figures began materializing throughout the command center. These were the most coherent, psychic echoes, humans who had been scientists, engineers, military officers, and leaders in life, and had retained enough individual identity after death to serve as advisors. Confederacy ships are gathering at Nexus Prime, reported the ghost of General Robert Hayes, former commander of Colonial Defense Forces. 300 vessels under the direct command of the High Council. Jake studied the Phantom General with interest. The psychic echoes had proven to be invaluable sources of intelligence and tactical expertise. Death hadn't ended their service to humanity. It had simply changed the nature of their duty. Recommendations? Jake asked. The ghostly council that had formed around them began discussing strategy in voices that sounded like whispers from another dimension. They had all died in the Voidhammer attacks, but their expertise lived on in the energy that powered New Haven. Demonstration of force, suggested the echo of Dr. Sarah Martinez, a xenobiologist who had perished on New Texas. Show them that. Every attack only makes us stronger. Economic warfare, recommended the phantom of businessman Alan Cooper. Target their trade routes and resource supplies. Make the cost of fighting us greater than the cost of accepting us. Katie had been listening while tending to her matter manipulation gardens. Or we could just expand into unoccupied space and let them deal with the reality that we're not going away. Before anyone could respond, the station's proximity alarms activated. A single ship was approaching under a diplomatic flag. The vessel's configuration identified it as belonging to the Confederacy's diplomatic corps. Ambassador Thekrin requesting permission to board, Steve reported from the communications station. Official diplomatic mission from the High Council. Jake exchanged glances with the other survivors. They could feel the collective consciousness of their dead stirring with interest. 50 billion murdered souls wanted to hear what the Confederacy had to say for itself. Grant permission, but full escort and containment protocols. An hour later, Ambassador Thekrin stood in New Haven's main conference room, surrounded by 6 human survivors who collectively contained enough power to destroy star systems. The alien diplomat's 3 hearts were beating rapidly as he tried to maintain diplomatic composure while standing in the presence of beings who existed partially outside normal space-time. The Galactic Confederacy recognizes that mistakes were made during the recent conflicts. Thekrin began carefully. We are prepared to offer significant reparations and territorial concessions in exchange for a cessation of hostilities. Jake leaned back in his chair, and the psychic echoes of dead humans whispered their opinions directly into his mind. He could feel their collective amusement at the word mistakes. Mistakes, Jake repeated slowly. You systematically exterminated 12 human worlds containing over 50 billion people. You used planet-killer weapons on civilian populations. You attempted genocide against an entire species. And you call that mistakes? The ambassador's skin changed color, a sign of extreme stress in his species. The decision was made by a previous administration. The current High Council seeks only peace and mutual prosperity. Amy's blue energy flared slightly. Ambassador, we can see the psychic echoes of our dead worlds. We know exactly who ordered those attacks and why. There was no previous administration. The same individuals who voted for genocide are the ones sending you here today. The ghostly figure of a human child appeared beside Thekrin, making him jump backward in terror. It was one of the countless young humans who had died in the attacks, given form by the void energy that powered the station. Tell your masters something, Jake said as more phantom figures materialized around the terrified diplomat. Humanity doesn't negotiate with species that attempt to exterminate us. We expand where we choose. We defend ourselves as we see fit, and we remember every crime committed against us. Peter stepped forward with military precision. Your Confederacy wanted to eliminate humanity as a threat to galactic stability. Mission accomplished. We are no longer the same species you tried to destroy. We've evolved into something far more dangerous than you ever imagined. The ambassador looked around at the ghostly figures that now filled the room, the psychic manifestations of 50 billion dead humans, all watching him with expressions of cold judgment. What do you want from us? Jake stood, and his scars blazed with the light of absorbed planet-killer energy. We want the galaxy to understand something very simple. The age of humanity asking for permission is over. We will expand into whatever systems we choose. We will defend ourselves with whatever force we deem necessary. And any species that attacks, human civilians will face not just military retaliation, but the psychic vengeance of every human who has ever died in this galaxy. The phantom child reached out and touched the ambassador's arm. Suddenly, Thekrin was experiencing the last moments of a human kindergarten class, feeling their confusion and terror as their world died around them. The diplomat collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the psychic assault. "Return to your High Council," Jake commanded as the ghostly figures began to fade. "Tell them that the dead remember, the living have evolved, and humanity's children carry the fury of 50 billion souls. The next time your people fire on human civilians, they won't be fighting 6 survivors. They'll be fighting every human who ever lived, and we don't stay dead anymore." Ambassador Thekrin fled the station in terror, carrying with him a message that would reshape galactic politics forever. As his ship disappeared into hyperspace, Jake turned back to the viewing port to watch more human vessels departing for distant stars. The galaxy had tried to eliminate humanity as a threat, and succeeded, only in creating something unprecedented, a species that carried its own dead as weapons and grew stronger with every attack against it. The Confederacy's databases were already updating their human threat assessment from primitive expansionist species to existential threat, avoid all contact. But Jake Martinez, standing surrounded by the ghosts of 50 billion murdered humans, knew that avoiding contact was no longer an option. Humanity had been given a choice: evolve or die. They had chosen